Welcome back to the Nose Plays Endless Space 2. We are now playing a brand new game with the Penumbra DLC. But today we're going to use a different faction than the Umbral Choir. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think the Vaulters as a faction are my favorite faction. And I think that they actually have the most mechanics that interact in a positive way with this hacking system that may prove useful. That could be completely off base because I don't play the other factions nearly as much as I play the Vaulters. I have quite a bit of experience with the Vaulters, a fair amount of experience with United Empire, and I've also played Sophons and Horatio a little bit as well. I haven't played a lot with Lumeris, Riftborn, Vidyani, Cravers. I haven't played with a lot of the other factions, honestly. So I really need to branch out more at some point. But for this video, what I wanted to do was revisit the hacking system that was introduced in the latest DLC, the Penumbra expansion pack, and see if I could take advantage of it with a different faction besides the Umbral Choir. The Choir is pretty cool. I think I have a better grasp of how to play them. They're also kind of boring in my opinion, maybe. And that's because they have the ability to just completely ignore everybody else. And so it becomes a very internally focused thing. You have very little to focus on, but you really focus on it. With only having one systems and a bunch of sanctuaries, and it's interesting. I like it, but it's just a different pace than the rest of the other players. The other thing that we want to experience, and I've started to see this a little bit in SB's series because he's quite a ways ahead of me at this point, is the defensive capabilities of the hacking system are really a mystery to me. Even after watching some of his videos, I still haven't quite figured it out, and I'm still playing off camera. I haven't completely figured it out. But with the Umbral Choir, because nobody can really see your system, you don't have to worry too much about defensive hacking. You don't have to worry about being hacked as much as you do with other players. I've noticed that pirates and other factions tend to hack you quite frequently. There are some notifications involved, but they're very vague and they don't really tell you how to deal with being hacked. But we'll try to explore that system a little bit, and I'll try to take some time to point those things out. Before we begin, I want to go ahead and point out the settings that I have today. I'm running 10 competitors, basically one of every faction. We're going to run at normal speed. I'm bumping pirates up to hard, and the game difficulty, I think, down to serious. Galaxy size is 8 for 10 players. That means it's going to be kind of like a knife fight in a cupboard. It's going to be very, very tight, and I've experimented actually with this setting with many constellations, and there are some things to like about it, but I don't think I'm ready to put a video out using that yet, especially with the Vaulters. The Vaulters have a weird settling mechanic that makes this maybe a little bit more crippling to them than other factions. I don't know. I need to experiment with it a little bit more, but it's a different way to play the game for sure. I am going to go ahead and set this to few, so this will put an average number of constellations, various sizes, but there won't be like a bunch of really tiny ones, which is what you end up with when you play with many. Just to give you a quick peek at these other settings, the only thing that I've changed here is I've changed special node frequency from normal down to low, and that is just because I would rather have more systems with planets than asteroid fields and whatnot. This might actually be a downside because the Umbral Choir can't put as many of their little beacons out, potentially, but I think it's a benefit to most of the other factions. And then over on this menu, I've set minor civilization difficulty to hard so that they actually build their systems up and have defensive fleets. We've set animation speed to 2x to help a little bit, and everything else is pretty standard. So let's go ahead and get started. And we'll see if I can, once again, give you guys a little bit of information on some of the ways that you can play the Vaulters differently than you've maybe played them before. I'm going to attempt very hard to play a little bit more aggressively with the Vaulters in this series. We'll probably only play till turn 40 to 60 again. I might go a little further than that. I don't usually finish games on my channel, so if you're interested in watching complete playthroughs, probably not the channel for you. My focus is going to be explaining the mechanics as best as I understand them to you guys so that you have some more information to work with. I'm not going to tell you that I'm always 100% correct because I know that's not the case, but I will tell you that I have a pretty good grasp of the game systems. And if nothing else, it's a good conversation that you can kind of have with me in the comments section below, or even just in your head. Talk it out with me and see if maybe you have a better idea or if my ideas help you improve your gameplay. So what I'm seeing immediately is there's a very nice system down here potentially with 5 planets, but none of them are tier 0 or potentially tier 1 planets since we start with a tier 1 tech. That means that this could be a very rich system in the late game, but very difficult to settle early. We'll have to take a look at it here in a second. I also see another system with 4 planets that's relatively close, 2 of which are tier 0 or tier 1 planets. This will almost certainly be our first settle. Now, it is tempting with the Vaulters, as SB has pointed out and as I originally hypothesized, that because of the mechanic of this Golden Age and how it works and how it increases the number of turns that you get it by delaying your settle, that it might actually be beneficial to scout a little bit and take this system on turn, or take a different system, a better system maybe, on turn 3 or 4. And what you're going to find is if you do that, your second settle, in many cases, is going to be the system that you just passed over, but you're several turns delayed. And that several turns of delay, while it doesn't have as big of an impact as it would with other factions because of the Golden Age, it still delays the point at which you start collecting science, the point at which you start collecting dust, the point at which you are able to settle your second colony because of the pacing that Vaulter colonies have to be settled in. Other factions can arbitrarily send out 3 colony ships within the first 10 turns. We can't. We get 1 settle on turn 1, essentially, and another settle around turn 10, if we're lucky. And so we're kind of forced into this rhythmic pace while other factions have a little bit more flexibility in the way that they colonize. And because of that, the sooner that we get started, the better off that we generally are. I'm not going to say that it's 100% the case that it's always best to settle the first system you see or the best system you can see, but it almost always is. And so even though this may not turn out to be a great system, we're probably going to settle there first anyways, and then just grab the next one with our second settle. This will be dictated a little bit by what we find when we get there. We're not going to look at any of this stuff really. This is just basically telling us what we've uncovered on the map. So there's the nebula, some of the luxury resources we found. Here's our hero, which we can't use yet, and the rejuvenation field that we always start on. Unfortunately, we can't use our hero to scout. You can't place your hero down on the Argosy for some reason in the opening of the game. That would be really neat if I could put my hero down immediately and start scouting before I actually settled. You can't do that. You have to use the Argosy to scout with if you're going to scout at all. The nice thing about the Argosy is that it does have this really massive detection range and a really, really high movement. However, as you can see, some lanes, even with the Argosy's massive movement, are not possible to cross. And I have had numerous games now where you cannot settle on your first turn. Period. You just can't do it. You have to wait till turn 2 at a minimum. And the Golden Age is really nice in that circumstance to keep you in the game, because a lot of players, if you had to do that, I mean, it would just cripple you. It's amazing how one turn can make a big difference. But because you get so many bonus resources from your Golden Age, it doesn't affect you as much as it would any other faction, really. But let's go ahead and head over here. Okay. That's nice. I kind of wish I could get over there. Jade Onyx is really, really cool. But we don't have the ability to travel across star lanes yet, so that's not going to happen. What do we have? Okay, so we're looking at this, and we have a medium Terran. I like a Terran planet a lot. Terran are one of the better planets to settle in the early game. One of the nice things about Terran planets is that they have a lot of food, and one of the downsides to the Vaulters is they have a penalty to food. So starting with extra food actually helps offset that just a little bit. We also have a Boreal planet, which is another, I believe, tier 0 planet, maybe tier 1. I have to look it up. But Boreal is one that you can colonize pretty much right away with any faction, so I think that's a tier 0. It does have a not so good anomaly on it. Hostile fauna is pretty bad with the minus approval. The food is okay, but it doesn't really offset the penalties. The penalties aren't quite as steep for us because we already produce extra science with most of our population, so we won't feel that quite as badly as other factions might on their science in the early game. But we're not planning on putting a lot of population here right away. We also have an Ash and another Ash. Ash planets are actually pretty good. They have really good industry and only moderate approval penalties compared to some of the other planets. They're also hot and sterile, which interact with a number of other mechanics in the game in a positive way. So I'm okay with this as our starting system. The downside that I see at the moment is we only have 3 curiosities. Subterranean is good. Subterranean is good. Ruins is good. Okay, so the fact that we have 2 subterranean curiosities right here means that there is a fair chance that we either have 1 titanium and 1 hyperium, or 2 of one kind, or 1 of the metal strategics and maybe a luxury resource. There are a few luxury resources that appear in subterraneans. Jade Onyx is one, which I would be perfectly okay with. Dark Glitter, I think, is another one, and there's a few others that appear in subterranean curiosities. I would prefer not to get a luxury resource. I would really like to see 2 strategic deposits when we uncover these. But if we don't, it won't be the end of the world. I have a backup plan, and I will be sharing that with you momentarily. But let's go ahead and get colonized here. I did disable the cutscenes for this playthrough just to kind of speed things along a little bit. So we start with our 2 population of Vaulters. Vaulters have bonus ground battle damage, which is okay, but you just don't get invaded a ton in this game against the AI for some reason. And then we also have the Sister of Mercy, which is another okay faction. They give you approval, which can be very helpful in keeping your approval positive. But it's not the greatest. We can also see that the preferred luxuries are super spuds and deciduous trees down in the bottom there, and that's what these are all about. So there's the deciduous trees, there's the super spuds, and we now have access to Jade Onyx. That must have been from when we uncovered that other system and we saw the Jade Onyx on it. We can also see this over here in the population view. Here's the booster. And remember, boosters are really good if you can get them early. If you find a reward for a quest that gives you one of these 2 boosters, probably worth taking advantage of. These are not as good as some of the other boosters for other populations, but doubling the science and doubling the approval probably more than the science, is really sometimes valuable if it pushes you over a threshold or keeps you from falling below 1. We have our law slot, and I'm going to show you something that I've been doing a little bit differently with my start with the Vaulters lately. There's been a major change since one of the latest updates, since the Vaulter DLC released, basically. And if any of you have watched 4X Alchemist videos or my videos, you'll know a little bit about this supernova strategy that we've kind of taken advantage of. They've basically patched that out of the game, so you can no longer launch all your probes, then retrofit your ships and get new sets of probes to launch again. And so you can't use all your starting dust to basically just launch a ton of probes and figure out everything that's around you. And because of that, and because scouting is really important for the Vaulters, because you don't want to have to settle for a crappy system when you are limited in the number of and the pacing of your colonizations. For example, if I settle a crappy system and then the next turn find a really good one, I'm stuck waiting a long time before I can settle that good one. And there's a good chance that it gets taken by somebody else in the process. So scouting is really important as quickly as you can. So one of the things that we are going to do in the very early game is we're going to actually rush a second scout ship before we rush anything else. And I think in a situation where you start with Terran, Temperate, Fertile, you would almost always want to rush Xeno-Industrial Infrastructure because of how good the industry is and how good it snowballs everything else that you get. I think that in the case of the Vaulters, even when you have an ideal situation like this, I would still delay it in favor of getting a scout ship out because scouting is going to be so critical to being successful with the Vaulters. So I'm going to show you my tactic. You can decide whether it's better to use it in this circumstance or not. But this is what I'm going to try doing from now on, at least. Maybe not every single game, but in this game to show you guys for sure. So we got a couple of other things to look at. Let's go ahead and look. This is something that's really annoying. I just discovered this, and I don't know if this is a bug or if this is intentional, but I want you guys to notice something. Our starting fairing only has 6 movement. Okay. That's pretty good, right? 6 movement's pretty standard. A lot of other factions start with a lower movement than that. But notice that my icon here is highlighted for repairs and upgrades to the selected ship. Curious. So when I did some investigation, what I found is that our default design actually has a movement of 7. And if you open this up, you can see that we start with the upgraded engine that we get from one of our technologies that we start with. We start with one of the science technologies that gives us Mediterranean planets, and it gives us slightly better engines. This design already has that built into it. But what doesn't already have that built into it is our ship. Our starting ship actually starts with the default engine. So in order to get the 7 speed that you start with, you actually have to upgrade your engine, which is kind of annoying. We're probably going to end up doing it, but it's going to cost us dust right off the bat. We did start with a fair amount of dust, and we get bonus dust because of our golden age that's going on right now. So I think that's partially why they did it, but I also think that it could just be an oversight. I don't know. I'm not sure if this was intentional or not. What we are going to do before we mess with this, though, is we're going to look at our hero and her ship. I have discovered that it is almost, without question, more beneficial to get the hero some experience by flying them around and searching curiosities at the first few turns of the game. There's almost never a scenario where you're pulling your weight fast enough to level up as quickly as you could by searching curiosities. Once you've searched all of the major curiosities like right next to your system, it gets a little bit more dicey to keep spreading out and searching more. And so there is a good time to pull your hero back. But as long as there's a plethora of curiosities nearby to search, I would almost just keep her out there searching. There's almost not a situation where I can't hit level 3 before turn 9 or 10. And that means I'm usually leaving your hero in the capital from turn 1, you will reach level 2 at turn 8. It's just, and then you won't even reach level 3 for another 8 to 10 turns. So it just doesn't make any sense to put your hero on your system until you get the industry infrastructure down so that she's actually building buildings fast enough to gain XP. Otherwise, she's just sitting there for the early game when there's no industry, not gaining XP because nothing's getting done. And she could have been, or he could have been, better served running around scouting systems and actually leveling up so that by the time you do put them down, they actually are contributing to the system. So at least with the Vaulters and probably with everybody, with very few exceptions, it's going to be way more beneficial if you just lay your hero down on the system. One of the things we're going to do to this ship is we're going to completely retrofit it. We're going to pull everything off of it. And I want to get as much movement as possible, but also some probes. And so what we're shooting for on our other class scout ship is we're shooting for a movement of 8 with as many probes as we can attach to it. So this is the design that we're going to save. By pulling all these other modules off, we have completely eliminated our offensive abilities, so we can't blockade and we can't siege anybody. But we've also reduced the upgrade cost and the upkeep cost of this ship slightly. And so we're going to go ahead and apply that. And that's going to be just fine for us. And then we're going to come back to our design. And we're going to edit this design. So we're only on a movement of 7 with this module. I'm going to go ahead and put a second one down. And then this ship is only going to be used for scouting. So I'm going to go ahead and put a second probe. We are not going to fight with this ship. If it gets in a fight, we're going to retreat. I am going to leave the gun on here because this does have a little bit of value. And I could pull it off, but if I pull this off, you'll see it's only saving me 17 dust to pull that off. And I can't put anything else in this slot anyways, where I can re-equip this one. So I'm going to put this gun back for now. And we'll just leave this here. If we do end up retrofitting this design later on, we'll already have a weapon here and it'll make the retrofit cost a little bit cheaper. But right here, we're going to have a movement of 10 and we're going to have 2 sets of probes, which is going to give us, I think, 4? Yeah. 100% probe recovery rate on exploration modules. Interesting. So I had a viewer in my last video series point out that I was having some confusion with why some of my probes were not showing on ship the same cooldown as they should be. And it's related to this exploration ability, which reduces the recovery rate of modules. So it increases recovery rate. So if your recovery rate is 4, it increases it by 100%, which drops it to 2. If you were to put this on any other ship that doesn't have this role, this particular ability, the recovery rate would not be as good. Interesting. I did, for some reason, I just never knew about this. And I don't know why, because I've explored this system quite a bit, particularly with the military ships, but I wonder if all of the factions have the same explorer trait. I would imagine they do. For as far as I know, all of them have the same traits for their other attacker and defensive class ships. Well, that's good to know. But this is the design that I like most right now. This is what I've been rocking with my early game Vaulters. 10 movement is amazing and really helps us get around the galaxy. Obviously, our hero is going to slow us down a little bit, but that's okay in the beginning. We're not going to leave her out there for very long, and then this ship's going to really be able to get around. Another option that you can do is we could go something like this, and then this ship slows the hero down by 1, but we get even more probes. Maybe that's actually the way to go. I like the movement, but I think I'm gonna try this game. I haven't tried 3 probes on this thing yet. This is like 4 sets of probes for us. Our movement's gonna be only 7 instead of 8 down the lanes because the hero's max speed is 8. But maybe that's okay. And this will give us an opportunity to throw a lot more probes out. We won't be able to pull off the straight up supernova that I used to do, but we could get damn close with 8 probes every couple turns. So yeah, let's give that a try. Try new things. That's how you learn. All right, so we need to pay the retrofit cost for this ship. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. And then we're going to go ahead and add our hero to this fleet. And so now she's attached to it. And we want to make sure that we always do that before we grab curiosities. So now we can grab these curiosities, but we have to do it at the right screen. Not this one. There we go. And cross your fingers. Alright, so we got Jade Onyx. That's not the worst thing ever. And another load of Jade Onyx. These are both abundant deposits of Jade Onyx. That is good. Man, 2 abundant deposits of Jade Onyx is actually really good. For any other empire, this would be the best thing that you could find. For us, it's maybe like 3rd best. So it's still really good. Titanium and Hyperium are just such high demand for us. But this pretty much guarantees that our level 1 system development will be Jade Onyx. And this is not something you're going to get very often. 9 times out of 10, your system 1 development should almost always be Titanium. It's just that good. And we'll talk about why that is when we finally get to the point where we put Jade Onyx down. Let's go ahead and grab this and see what we got. A Titanium Enhancer. Enhanced projectile and crit chance. Okay. It's a decent module, one that we might end up using. It's pretty irrelevant in the early game. First 20 turns. Maybe around turn 40 that becomes a little bit more relevant. Alright, so we have 1 probe left, and you'll notice we retrofitted these ships before we used our probes because retrofitting afterwards does not restock your probes, and in fact we didn't even get the full stock from the ones we retrofitted. The probes that we put on her and the extra probes that we put on this did not actually take in such a way that we could use them right now. So we got 1 probe to launch and we have 2 lanes to travel. I'm going to launch this probe down this lane, I think. And then we're going to start traveling down this lane since we have a little bit of movement left. And we'll see where we find. Okay, so that's it for that part. Hopefully we find some more curiosities because right now, I guess I really should have come over here and looked at this. Okay, what do we have? An Arid with a curiosity, an Ash with a curiosity, a Gas with 2 curiosities, second Ash and a second Gas. So 5 planets is good. 2 mediums and a small is okay, and 2 large gas planets are okay. They don't hold as much population as other system types do, but they do give you a lot of resources. Unfortunately, none of these planets are giving food, so food's going to be a real problem in this system. In order to fill it out, you're probably going to need some hefty investment in food buildings and other food-related tech. Still, pretty good system, and it does have Eden Incense for sure, which is actually a reasonable Tier 1, Tier 2 system development tool. Not one that either of our current population really care for, so not as critical, but still 5 planets is hard to pass up. Let's take a look at this system. Okay, tiny jungle, a Mediterranean, a savanna. This is actually a pretty good system, and it has an average, and a poor, but 2 more deposits of jade onyx, and one subterranean, so 1 potential chance to roll Hyperium or Titanium. We would have to research tech to travel across this lane, but it wouldn't be impossible to do. So we'll think about it. Let's go ahead and look at our technologies and decide exactly what we want to grab first. And I think because we start with these 2 technologies right off the bat, it doesn't make sense to continue down that tree. One of the things that you kind of want to do to keep your development on pace is kind of go around in loops and grab things at the lower part of the loop until you unlock the next tier. Because we have the science party in power, we can jump ahead, but it costs a lot of science to do that, and it sets us back if there are other things we could be doing. This is almost certainly going to be the first thing we do. With the Terran planet, we need to get this down as quickly as possible. It's going to take us 3 turns to get this down, or to get this technology done, and then several turns to get this building built. But once it's built, everything else is going to move a little bit quicker. And as I pointed out, I want to go ahead and grab a ship as my first tech. Now this ship will take 3 turns to potentially get in service. We might be able to reduce that with a law. And one of the things that I've been doing is running this lower fleet cost law to drop a turn off of my construction, and then switching to Dirty Hands Act as soon as I get system developments in my queue. So we were at 3 turns. Let's see if that dropped a turn off of it. It did not. But it did lower the cost, so we're going to run it anyways, just to ensure that we're getting the maximum amount of rollover into Xeno-industrial infrastructure, and then as soon as we start that, we'll switch that law to the Dirty Hands Act. What else do we want to do? I'm going to go ahead and just queue up these buildings. Actually, I want any rollover to run into public-private partnerships, because that's going to be the next one we want to get down immediately. These are both really good buildings, but when you have a Terran planet, plus 30 is way better than plus 20. This is plus 30, but we are already pretty good on dust and science right now. This will become more critical as we move a little bit further along. All right, I think that's everything that we need to go over in turn 1. This is always a long turn 1 for me, especially when I'm explaining a lot of stuff, so bear with me. I don't think there's anything else that we want to talk about right now, so let's go ahead and get going, and the rest of the turns will hopefully go a little quicker. One would hope. Okay, a terrible system, and no curiosities to search. This is not a good start for our hero. Let's stop there. We'll have an opportunity to launch a probe or 2, which may be beneficial, but I have a feeling we're going to end up coming all the way back to here. Unless we get a good system over here or more paths over here. We'll see. Hopefully this probe will let us know what we're dealing with soon. And that is the end of turn 2. Exciting, I know. Told you they'd go faster. Alright, so you can see we're on turn 3 and we've already leveled up our hero. Now, at this point, we have to make a decision as to how we're going to allocate those points to some extent. And because she's not on a system, a lot of those abilities are worthless until we lay her down on a system. But we're leveling up at a way faster pace by doing it this way than we would if we were doing it any other way. So we're going to talk about how do we deal with the fact that none of the systems in our immediate vicinity have titanium and hyperium. First of all, let's talk a little bit about this hero. Shield capacity on fleet is a meh ability. Until you really have some decent shields, this doesn't really amount to much of anything. And even then, shields are situational at best. They're good all-around defenses. They do stop kinetic weapons a little bit, but they're limited in their ability. Plus 10 per anomaly on colonized planets or systems. This is really good. Every planet that has an anomaly, each anomaly that you have colonized gives you 10 extra industry. So there are a number of systems you'll find in the game that have between 4 and 6 anomalies on a rare occasion, and those systems are prime systems for her to get going, because once you get each of those planets colonized, it helps snowball the industry output a little bit. There would be one situation where I would consider, although I still think it's wrong to do, putting her down immediately, and that would be if she starts on a planet with 2 anomalies uncovered, because that's 20 industry right from the get-go, from turn 1, and that's not nothing, and it will be more than that soon. So that might be a situation where I'd consider putting her down first, but otherwise just send her out and get as much XP as you can from scouting curiosities. We're already at the same point we would have been if we had stayed. We're just missing out on maybe 1 or 2 turns of the bonus, whatever it is that we decide to put a point into. So the second point that I would consider putting her, because she's almost certainly going to be a better governor than a captain, fleet commander, is this ability. Plus 10 per fertile on system. So every fertile planet in our system will give us an extra 10 food, and then another 10 on the system itself. This is potentially worth 30 food for us right now, and I believe these double if you put a second point in it. So that would be 60 food. The reason that I like this ability on her is that it gives her a way to offset your food penalties, or if you just start in a really food poor system, this is a way to help make sure that your system still grows at a decent clip. So this is what I would definitely consider in the early game. However, I think the most important skill that the Vaulter hero has, that all Vaulter heroes have, is this skill right here. And it looks super insignificant. Half a point of titanium and half a point of hyperium every single turn. You can double that to 1 full point every single turn. If you get her down within the first 10 turns of the game at level 3, that's basically an extra 100 to 150 resources throughout the game. And the timing of these resources is what's so critical. In our current situation, we have almost 0 ability to rush our Argosy and colonize systems faster. This ability alone allows us the opportunity to colonize faster. And if you've watched SB's games with the Vultures, you've found out how many times he becomes resource crunched, even when you have access to resources, even when you start in a system with titanium or hyperium, or even both if you're really lucky. You find that you frequently run out of these resources because the Vultures spend them so much more than every other faction. Every faction spends these resources, but the Vultures spend them for colonizing. They spend them for portals. They spend them for luxury boosters on their systems. They spend them for everything. And so any resource output that you can get, and the faster that you can get it, the better. So this is almost guaranteed to be my #1 ability when I do not have both resources. If I had a system where I started with both and I was food deficient, I might consider this over this and maybe picking this up later. But that's not our current circumstance. our current circumstances, we have 0 of this, and this is so critical to our ability to get going in the game. I'm going to level it up to 2 as fast as possible. Hopefully we get a better look at... Yeah, I was hoping this probe would make it over there before we had to travel there, but it is what it is. Turn 3 is in the books. This is an important turn because we finished Xeno-Industrial Infrastructure. That 15%, while it didn't roll over much, you can see that we rolled over a little bit of industry into public-private partnerships. So we'll be able to get that down maybe a little bit sooner than we normally would. However, I'm not going to finish it right now. I'm just going to push it back in the queue. And it actually, these buildings have the same cost. So you can see we did take a turn off of this by rolling that 15%, even though it wasn't showing up on the turn timer for the production of that fairing. It did show up here. So very good stuff. And then we're going to further fix that by putting Dirty Hands Act, which is going to reduce by 10% the cost of these further. And so now this one went down a turn and this one went down a turn as well. So we're saving a couple of turns by doing that. That's what I would say about, I think that's the most efficient way to get into this. So we're still going to have this up by turn 8, which is still really good. Xeno-Industrial Infrastructure by turn 8 is not bad at all. And then I have a decision to make. I can either rush public-private partnerships or I can move drone networks in front of it to try to get a little bit more industry and food. I'm less likely to do that in our current circumstance because, again, we're getting good food from having a Terran planet. And we've already put a little bit of effort into this. We might as well finish it. The bonus of this is 30, where this is only 20. But it is 20 of more important early game resources, so it's kind of give or take. What I'm more likely to do is get both of these done and then queue up this, which will give us another 20 industry and 20 science when it gets completed. And that's worth 40 points as opposed to whatever these are worth, which is why these constantly get pushed back in the queue for me. Sometimes I'll just go ahead and get them done, but other times, like right now, it just makes more sense to get these buildings and then this. When you have less good planets with fewer temperate and fertile abilities, which happens, then these buildings are worth their weight in gold because they get you started with something, where these ones don't give you very much of anything until you get lots of planets colonized if you're not getting the fertile and temperate bonuses. So enough about that. Let's get our other scout ship out, and this gives us more to do. So one thing I don't want to do is I don't think I want to go down here and scout these because I think that may be where our hero ends up. She may not even get there in time, but we have a couple of options. So I can shoot out a bunch of probes from where we're at now, which I think actually isn't a terrible idea, and kind of pull the supernova tactic we've talked about in the past. Ooh, Pegasus is uncovered. At least 4 curiosities, maybe more. So that's where our hero will be for the next few turns. So then maybe we do head down here and get these. But I think it makes sense, since we do know at least 2 star lanes, to send out 2 of our 6 probes. Yes, we have 6 probes. Just like that. And that will give us some information on this other constellation here shortly. And then we'll send this guy. Why are we unable to move? There we go. And now we can get started on traveling down that lane. Let's take a peek at this system, because this is probably going to be our second colonization. Oh, yes. I'm liking this already. So I see titanium. I see a signal and another subterranean. So anytime you get a titanium with a second subterranean, there's a fairly good chance that that second one is going to be Hyperium. Sometimes it'll be Jade Onyx or Dark Glitter or some other luxury resource. I've never seen it where they're both titanium. I think there's like some kind of an odds thing that if you already have a titanium deposit, it automatically makes it the other kind. I'm not certain of that, but I've never seen a planet with two titanium. I have seen a titanium on this planet and a titanium on this planet, kind of like the Jadonics. Um, but whenever I've rolled two strategics on a single planet, it's always been one of each. So I think that might be built into the game code. And so there's a very good chance that this system is going to give us an average deposit of titanium and some amount of Hyperium, which almost certainly makes it our first settle. And we want to settle it as quickly as humanly possible, because the next thing that's going to happen in a very short while is pirates are going to start claiming any system that doesn't have a colony on it. And we can't start our colonies early like other factions and then our outposts. We can't start an outpost early like other factions and turn it into a colony. We have to wait until we can either buy it outright or wait till it's free, which sucks. At least in terms of timing with pirates, because there are times where I've had the Argosy ready to drop, and then the turn I'm able to do it, pirates. And now I have to move off the system I've been sitting on for a while. So hopefully that won't happen. I do also want to point out SB was having trouble finding the Argosy. He was late in the game. He had like 8 or 9 systems, and his Argosy got lost in the mix. There's a button right here. Click to focus view on the Argosy. No matter where you're at on the map, if you click it, it'll center you on the Argosy, which is really nice and really helpful later in the game when things do get a little bit more hectic. So keep that in mind if you're ever missing your colony ship, since you only get one of them. You don't want to lose it. Okay, technologies. So what do we want next? Well, that's a good question. Most of the time, if I know I have a Hyperium deposit, I'm just going to queue this up because I want to start mining it as quickly as possible. We're not certain that we have a Hyperium deposit just yet. And so maybe another building would be more worthwhile, or maybe another technology would be more worthwhile. We do know there are some curiosities of a higher level than we have the ability to search. This would give us the ability to search them. It also gives us the ability to move out of our current constellation and to settle Savannah. What is important right now is we know we need ash planets, but what else do we need? Forest, tundra, and snow. So tundra is going to be the real important one that we want to probably settle turn 1. I believe we already have the ability to settle tundra. I think that's this technology. Yes. So neither of those are critical. Savannah? Where's Savannah at? This is Savannah. So maybe this is the one we take next. It's only going to take 2 turns. We'll still have ability to grab this. It's going to be more than a few turns before we need this, honestly. The other thing that we really ought to focus on getting soon is galactic commodities. And the reason we want to grab galactic commodities is the only other way to get resources besides the hero mining ability, if you just don't come across them, and also just luck of the draw with curiosities, sometimes you'll get caches, is quests and this, the marketplace. Now the marketplace is fickle because sometimes resources you need run dry, or sometimes they're just too expensive, but we are making a fair amount of dust right now, and getting this probably is a good idea. The faster we get this, the more likely we'll be able to buy any amount of Hyperium that we need, or titanium we need, in order to settle early, which we are definitely going to try to do. Be the first to produce 100 dust in a single star system. We will almost never get these. There are other factions that are just way better at it than we are. Let's go ahead and move our ships. Why did this ship not move? Did you guys see that? Our ship didn't move. Like, it was there when I pushed the button. That was really weird. Okay, well, that's going to take an extra turn for no obvious reason that I can think of. Kind of weird bug. Huh. I must be missing something. Here we go. Cross your fingers. This is the most important. And it's Jadonix. Bummer. I've never been so disappointed to find Jadonix in my life. I love Jadonix with any other faction, but this is... I mean, we have Jadonix out the wazoo over here. I mean, it's good trade fodder, but there's no Hyperium over here, so... Found another titanium deposit. That was good. A battle tactic. Okay. And... Transvine. Well, it's another interesting resource. It's a good one if you're having approval problems. The Vultures generally don't have approval problems. At least until much later in the game when they start to over-colonize their cap. Then you start to have some. But once again, I would almost never take this as a system development with this faction. With other factions, it definitely has its value. We have one more probe and nothing else to search. So what we're going to do is send it off in a random direction. Eeny, miny, miny, mo. And just hope we catch something with it. There is no sense sticking around here, I don't believe. Because we don't have anything to search. But I thought there was a place with a level 2 curiosity somewhere. Is it here? Yeah. So this might be something we'll be able to search in a few turns. Unfortunately, I don't know how many turns it's going to take us to get there. 6. Well, I guess we go ahead and queue up the move and see if we can't get there in 6 turns. We'll probably leave a couple of these for her to search, just so we can make sure that she hits level 3 before we put her down. This is just all the curiosities we found. We found a Zavali population, which is more science and approval, and scientist political opinion. All those things are okay for us. Not great, but not bad. Kind of like a combination of our 2 current populations. Jeez, so much Jadonix. That's just nuts. Kind of like a combination of our 2 current populations. Now I'm wondering, I don't know what happened there. I'll have to go back and watch the video and see what I missed. Something's definitely not right. This doesn't look like it dropped a turn either. Did I not end the turn like I thought I did? Maybe that's the problem. Alright. We all moving this time? Yeah. I must have done something weird. Okay, so now we have an interesting circumstance or situation. The Argosy is regenerated. It is available for travel. However, it's going to take 12 turns for our next free colonization. And if we were to try and colonize right now, it's almost 1,000 dust and 14 of each tier 1 strategic resource. Every turn, the prices of these things are going to go down by some factor of 12, I guess. And eventually they will reach 0, and we will be able to colonize for free. But the faster we get this one down, the sooner that it will start regenerating the next one, which means you can get it down a little bit faster. And so the cost of these go up significantly. I think the next time that we regenerate, the starting cost for strategics alone is like 24 or 28, like doubles. And so it gets very, very expensive. If you want any hope of rushing your first 4 or 5 systems, you're going to have a healthy source of dust and strategics in order to make that happen. And we're going to definitely try to do that, but this is not looking promising for an early start. This is one of those potential dice rolls that can save your bacon in that respect. Let's say that we had found a bunch of Hyperium deposits, and this reward was 75 titanium. Well, I know for certain what I'm doing, even if it's not optimal for me to go out of my way to build defensive or ship improvement buildings. I'm going to do it just for the strategics. But in this circumstance, we have titanium. This is going to give us more, which is still good, but it would be better if this were Hyperium. The second reward is almost always a luxury resource. And in this situation, deciduous trees are an okay reward. They're not better than Jadonics, so I'm not interested in using these for system development. And we don't have any access to it in our immediate vicinity, so we can't make more, which is a bad thing if you're going to use it for system development. But what it is good for is if you have a population that uses deciduous trees as its booster, you can potentially take advantage of that. So let's minimize this for just a second and double check. The Sisters of Mercy actually use deciduous trees as their booster. And so this makes my decision relatively easy. While the titanium would be nice, it's not going to be as useful to me as maybe this will be. The approval bonuses at this point in the game aren't great, but they might be enough in certain circumstances to keep us at happy or keep us at fervent or push us into one of those two categories when we otherwise wouldn't be. And so occasionally looking at my approval and seeing if our booster is going to be worth popping will be worth it. And so that's the one that we're going to take. Also, the Seeker one is just generally a better one. For scientific buildings is something that you're going to do anyways with any faction. So this is just something we would always be doing eventually. The timing of which it varies, but building military buildings is not always something that you're going to focus on doing. And so the way that I choose these rewards is really based on my needs, and also do we have a population that benefits from these, and is it worth doing? If it were just the Vulture population, maybe not, because a little bit of science that they produce is kind of meh, especially if there's any kind of benefit to this. But where it's the approval benefit, there are definitely circumstances where having just a few more points of approval keeps you at a higher state, which gives you a lot of other resources. So this could be really good for us. So we're going to go ahead and take that. And we're going to move on to the next turn. Is there anything else I need to be doing this turn? Oh yes, the Argosy. There is something we want to do this turn. Okay, so the Argosy is an interesting ship because it has massive movement, but it also has a really, really big detection radius, which we can see here. And at this point in the game, there aren't any real pirates or anything floating around that can interfere with our movement. So we can use this ship to scout quite a bit. The other thing is, because the detection radius is so large, it actually will uncover sometimes these nodes that are on the edges of other systems that aren't really attached by star lanes, but just floating out here. And a lot of times the Argosy will detect those just by flying by. So we're going to go ahead and fly down this lane and uncover whatever's down here. I doubt it's going to be better than this system, but we have such a high movement. By the time we're able to afford the early settlement, we're going to be able to fly all the way back here with almost no concerns whatsoever. The only risk that we really do run is if we do run into another player that could potentially attack the Argosy, but nobody can outrun us. So as soon as we retreat, we're pretty much safe. I have had a few situations where the Argosy has gotten destroyed by pirates, and it's a terrible, terrible thing. It teleports back to your capital, but it has like a massive cooldown before you can use it again, which really can stall your expansion, like tremendously stall your expansion. In the super late game, when you start moving into military conquest and you can take systems with your military as an alternative to settling with the Argosy, it's not as big a deal, and so you can play a little more risky with the Argosy. And there's even some upgrades later in the tech tree that allow you to outfit it as a pseudo-military ship, which someday we may talk about. But in the early game, holy crap, if you lose the Argosy, you're hurting real bad, because it just takes so long to repair it. And I don't believe there's any way to rush the repair with dust, which is what's really sucks. I could be wrong on that. I've only had it happen a couple of times, and I don't remember, but I do know even if it is, it's really expensive. So, okay, anything else that we wanted to look at this turn? I don't think so. Our laws are still fine. We're still running system improvements. Let's just keep going. We've got a new Vaulter population on turn 6. That's not terrible. We're about to get another population from the Zivali when they get there. Alright, what do we got? We have a really crappy 3-planet system. An anomaly that's mixed. Not the worst anomaly ever. Industry for science isn't terrible, but the approval hit kind of sucks on a planet that's already bad. If this were an anomaly were on a good planet that didn't already have a pretty bad approval hit, it wouldn't be as detrimental. We can take a look at this. You can see we're down to 900, so it dropped about 80, and it dropped about 1 point. It's 1 and a partial point, so at some point it's actually going to drop 2, but not very often. I think, let's take a look at how much movement we have to get back here. It's only going to take 4 turns to get all the way back there, and so we're going to go ahead and continue down at least 1 more lane. This ship has the ability to search a bunch of these, but there are only 3 of them. So what I'm going to do instead is we're going to launch a supernova of probes, and we'll launch 5 that way. And you can see the Argosy passed this system and it uncovered it. So we found one of those little systems off the main highway. And you can see over here, 6 curiosities. So maybe, depending on how long it takes that other technology to finish, we do still have it queued up, right? 4 turns before that completes. Maybe we send our ship over here. Our hero could potentially make it over there. Man, that's a tough choice. 3 turns to get there, but only 3 curiosities. 6 curiosities if we go there. It's probably going to take another 2 turns to get across there, which means we're just sitting here for 2 turns while we wait. Yeah, let's just finish what we planned on doing before, and I'll start to send this ship back that way. but those 6 curiosities might be worth sticking around for, because we still, at this point, barely have Xeno-industrial infrastructure down. But we will have it down by the time she's ready. And she's going to be ready in 3 turns. So on turn 9, we can actually reattach her here, which will be just after Xeno-industrial infrastructure gets completed. So it's probably worth putting her back here right away, but we'll see how many turns this takes. A bit of supernova going on here. Go ahead and get all of our ships moving. Okay, so we found another system. And this one actually has Hyperion. It's a tiny tundra, which isn't ideal, but it's an average deposit of both. I am highly considering choosing this one over the other one. And there are 2 reasons for that. Number 1, I can see an enemy probe here. This is not our probe. Our probes are orange. This is the green player's probe. That means that this system is going to be under contest. We're going to contest this system. And if we don't colonize it very quickly, all they have to do is put an outpost on it, and we won't be able to colonize it. As soon as an outpost is down, the Vaulters can no longer take a system. However, this system way back over here is way away from anybody and seems to be relatively safe. Pirates could potentially settle on it, which would suck. But that's a risk I think I would be willing to take. And we can always deal with pirates if we have to. We also have some other options with Aurum, Arcturus, and Hoth as other options. But if we don't take the first thing we see with Hyperion and Titanium, we could be in really big trouble. The one thing I'm worried about here is if they're sending a probe, they see that we are scouting this, and they may send some military ships over here. And I don't really have any military ships to deal with them. I do have 2 guns. I could group these up and send them over here, but it may not be fast enough. And there's a lot of other things that we really need those ships to be doing right now. So we'll see. I don't think I want to go down this lane, though. I think I want to just sit here and see if we can't find a way to rush this. Here's the problem. We need a lot of dust, and we also need the resources. And in order to get the resources, we got to pay for them with dust. So there's only one way that we're actually going to get this done. And that is, make sure our hero gets to level 3 by scouting these, put her back at level 9, or turn 9, and start collecting the 1 a turn. And so every turn this goes down by 1 and these go up by 1, and that potentially puts us at a point where our dust is enough to buy us a couple of turns early and get this down before they put anything on it. And that's what we're going to hope for. I'm just going to put this unit to sleep and hope that nobody comes and attacks me. We're hoping to maybe settle by turn 12, 13, maybe 15. Oh boy, it's the Hishu. We found some dark glitter. And
name of the Hishu nation and Donatsi the sun god, I greet.
Where did we see them at? Pisces is another system with both Hyperion and Titanium, so that's another option. We will be able to travel across star lanes in 4 turns. Worst case scenario. But this is what I was talking about. This is why having that extra set of probes is so important. Because if we had settled this and then like a few turns later discovered these were like right there, I would have been really disappointed that we hadn't taken one of those instead. So now we have two much better options in terms of the resources we need. They may not be better systems overall, but those resources are really critical for our faction. Saving these curiosities is also kind of a risk, but I didn't see any potential players being able to come and snipe them. So that's one of the reasons why they did that. If it were a situation where I knew another player was close to them, I probably would have grabbed them with this ship rather than leave them to chance. I'm wondering, if we zoom out, is this all one constellation? No, this is the Libra. Okay. This is the Libra constellation, and this is the Cancer constellation. So actually, this is a good constellation for us if we want to choose a science victory. If we can get the core of our systems down in this constellation, we can get an extra 15% science, which is actually really good for our faction, since we make extra science in a lot of different ways. Keeping pace with most of the other players at the moment. Few of them are way ahead of us, including the one that we just ran into. That's not a good sign. I think that has to do with the fact that they start with the behemoth. Okay, we see a minor faction over here, it looks like. Couple of special nodes. Xeno-industrial infrastructure is complete. We have 8 probes. We do not need 8 probes for this task, but we do need at least 3 and potentially 4. Found a pulso. And micro factories, which is actually a really good anomaly. Extra food. Some influence. And Jadonics. Woo! So much Jadonics. Alright. Well, because of all of this, we now have a better idea of where to send our next few probes. Send 3 of them that way. I'm going to send 1 across this star lane just in case there's something. And I didn't see this earlier, but there is another lane out that way. Oh, and we'll send another one up this way just in case. Sometimes these are clustered. And this is turn 9, and she did just hit her level 2 of this ability and level 3 overall. So she's level 3, she's got 2 points into that. So starting right now, we are now gaining no resources from her because we have no anomalies uncovered, unfortunately. And we didn't put any points into her other abilities which provide resources, but we're getting 1 Hyperium and 1 Titanium. And that is going to prove invaluable in our ability to get down our colony just a little bit earlier. The fact that we're also grabbing a bunch of population pips from uncovering curiosities is also going to make prioritizing this as one of our next few constructions really important. Alright, that being said, this ship is now free to do what it likes. And I think what it would like to do is maybe just hang out here until we can cross to Hoth, which means maybe we head back. We don't actually get any improvements from this research alone. Yeah. Um, we've already got that and that. So going back to retrofit isn't really that important or feasible. If we did go back to retrofit, it would be to put more engines on so we could get around more, because you can see there's a lot of territory to cover. Otherwise, we kind of just stay here and wait. I'm already going to plan on sending this guy down this way. So the other option is, if he's heading down that way, maybe we send this guy over here. 5 turns to get there. I think we are going to go ahead and retrofit to the better engines. The probes are nice in the very early game, but the engines are so much better in the mid game when you actually need to travel more than you need to scout curiosities. Although the ability to send out probes every other turn is pretty nice too. I think I'm still going to go ahead and upgrade these ships to double engines though. Alright, turn 10. Very slow going so far. We're going to keep him moving and get the curiosity that we can over here. Tough decision. I am going to redirect him over here. We'll be able to do that in 2 turns, so right before we make it to this node, we'll be able to start heading over here and get these curiosities. This could be a system we want to grab. Mediterranean, snow, boreal, lots of curiosities. It could be really good, and an ice planet's not terrible either. There are definitely worse systems out there. Alright, let's take a look at the cost of this again. We're at 8. So next turn we'll have 2, and it'll be at 7, then 6, and it'll be at 6 or 5, then 4. So yeah, like turn 14 or 15 will probably be the turn we'll be able to settle. It will be a few turns early, but not many. Still, all we can do is hope that a pirate doesn't spawn on here right before we're able to afford it. Alright, the military objective. And we could be playing a little more risky with this and searching this lane and coming back here in a couple turns, but I'm not feeling risky at the moment. Alright, we're going to get public-private partnerships in 1 turn. Our science is going to go up significantly. We need to queue up the next science endeavor. And I think that's going to be this, because we want Hyperium as quickly as we can as an income. That says 6 turns now, but when public-private partnerships gets finished, that's going to drop significantly. And so it may actually get done right around the time that we settle this. Oh, we're lucky. We dodged a bullet. So the pirate systems are not on any of the ones that we were eyeballing. That is so... Oh, you have no idea how thankful I am, because if we had had a pirate show up here, that means we got to travel all the way over here. And just out of curiosity, that's only 4 turns to get there. The Argosy is really fast, but it does put us right down here with the Hishu, who are extremely aggressive. I would much rather keep a star lane or open space between us for a while rather than dealing with them. We got a Pulso civilization. We can do first contact, but not much more. We don't have the ability to talk to them yet. They might be one that we want to bring on board. Public-private partnerships. You can see this is going to get done in like 2 turns now. And we're running out of things to build. So we need to get some construction in our next tech. This is a building we can build, although it's not very useful in our home system. What would be useful? This is a unique vaulter building. It's interesting. So it counts as a unique building. For quests that require unique buildings, this will count as one of your unique buildings. It costs manpower, which is weird, and it has a fairly high industry cost. But it is one of the other few ways that you can accelerate your acquirement of Tier 1 strategics. And a fairly important building, though not as good as some of the other ones. But if you're in a situation where you just can't seem to find any other sources of Hyperium or Titanium, this is a way to get some. And it's not insignificant when you pair that with the hero ability. When you're grabbing 2 a turn, it does add up to a meaningful amount. So I don't think it's something we need to rush just yet. Our situation isn't quite as dire as it could have been. Maybe we go ahead and grab off-world agribusiness, and then we can talk to the Pulsos. I'll go ahead and queue that up for now. It's really a helpful ability to have. Alright. Get all of our ships moving again. We are going to have to start worrying about pirates, but I have some ways to deal with that. We can get over there pretty safely, I think. And we are only a few Hyperium away from being able to afford this. The issue is if we sell, or if we buy Hyperium, 3 Hyperium, we're not going to have the dust to afford the settlement any longer. But we do have some things we could do to change that. There is a lot of this on the market. And these are actually really cheap right now. We needed 3? Hold on. What was the cost of that again? We need 6. We only need 3. At that price. Yeah, we can do that. And we can still, I think, afford... We can. We don't even have to sell anything. I was thinking we could sell just a couple of titanium and maybe that 5 transvine that we got to make enough, but this will do. So by turn 12, we're going to have an entire colony up and running. That's really quick. It's quicker than most other civilizations can sometimes even get an outpost down, let alone a colony. And that means that we're going to get another golden age kicked off and rolling. That golden age will impact the other system and continue to boost its approval, which we'll want to look at because we may have some ways to manipulate it here very soon and make sure that we're above a threshold. So we're going to go ahead and colonize, and we're going to colonize the tiny tundra, even though it is the only system we can on this one. The other one had 2 options. This is going to give us an average deposit of each, which will give us an income of 2 a turn, which pushes our income up. I don't know why we're at 2.3 and 0.3. I'm not sure what that's all about, but either way, we now have titanium and Hyperium output, which is super critical for us. Unfortunately, this planet sucks. And this is a circumstance that I was talking about earlier. Normally, I would always start with Xeno industrial infrastructure and public-private partnerships if I have a good planet. We do not have a good planet. This is only going to give 10 industry, and this is only going to give 10 science. Both of these buildings are better choices in this circumstance than these two. Now, these ones get better as you colonize the other planets in the system, but keep in mind, Barren and Arctic are fairly deep in the tree, and we won't be able to grab those technologies right away, let alone get them colonized right away. We need some industry up front to do that. So what we're going to do is queue up both of those buildings for the next 6 turns. The other thing that I may queue up and try to rush is Miners Union. It costs a little bit of dust, but it will increase these outputs by 1, making them both 3. Which in my opinion is maybe worth more than getting these down, at least until we have the research that gets these unlocked. Once we have the research that gets these unlocked, we can focus more on these. But I'm going to go ahead and queue these up in this order for now. This is going to take 16 turns as it is. It will get a little bit better with time once Drone Networks gets built. And we may even move this in front of it. But this does probably need to get done on this system since we're limited right now. Another thing to keep in mind, if you have a system like this, where you have one of each of these, this is way more efficient than that other building that we were just looking at. This only costs 500 industry. That other one cost over 1,000 and some manpower to get down. Now it does count as a unique building, so it does have some interactions in that regard, but this is a much better way if you have a system that has these to get a little bit of these resources. That other building is more of like an emergency building to get down when you have nothing better to build, or you just can't find a system that has strategics, because you need some output of strategics to do some of your cool stuff later in the game. Like settle early like we just did, or build a portal like we'll do eventually. All right, we got a curiosity here. We can scout 2 of them actually. Both of them are atmospheric. Sometimes it's worth waiting a couple of turns to scout atmospheric, because there is a quest that pops up right around turn 15, and you can secure yourself some free resources by saving the atmospherics around you and then grabbing them once that quest pops. The risk, of course, being that if somebody else flies over and grabs them while you're waiting, you just miss out on it. And so we're not going to risk that. We're going to go ahead and grab them. Okay, battle tactics, which are not all that relevant, and microfactories again, which is okay. Having a little bit of food on a barren planet's better than no food. And the approval will help offset the penalty. -8 per population sucks. -7 sucks slightly less. So we'll definitely need some approval before we can grow population on this system. And then another thing that we have an option to do now is something that I often like to do right around this time during the game. And that is, pirates are going to start spawning, and pirates are very annoying. They do harass your ships quite effectively, especially since we up the difficulty to hard. But as a Vaulter player, you have the ability to simply kind of sort of ignore the pirates by privateering your fleets. And once you privateer your fleet as a pirate, a few things happen. First of all, everybody else who sees your fleet sees a pirate. It looks like a pirate. It'll have pirate stats. It'll have a pirate model. It'll basically look like a pirate. But pirates won't attack you, and you have some unique things. So you won't be able to attack pirates either, or invade their planets while you're in privateer mode. But if you invade other systems as a privateer, you can actually burn their systems down in such a way that it won't reveal you as the Vaulter player as having done it, which is kind of a neat thing, and particularly useful in a few situations like when cravers have taken over a bunch of territory and you need to just squish them, but you don't really want all of their really bad depleted systems. Using privateer fleets to deal with them is one way to handle that circumstance. So we're going to go ahead and activate the privateer ability on this fleet, and you can only activate this in a system that's friendly to you, and maybe even in your home system only. I'm not certain of that. And then we'll probably bring this guy over here as well. We have 4 probes. I'm going to send one down this lane and one down that lane, and then I'm going to save the other 2 and head over this direction. And let's see what we have here. 1, 2. Actually, we don't need to save 2. It's going to take a couple of turns to get there, so let's just go ahead and throw these ones out as well. We'll throw one that way, and we'll throw one that way. Okay, we're probably going to go ahead and wrap this video up and continue this game tomorrow. So I think this is probably as good a place as any to stop for the night. But I think I've demonstrated, well, we'll end one turn here, and we'll save it at the beginning of next turn. But I think I've demonstrated, to a large degree, some of the starting tactics that I've been using with varied success with the Vaulters. Most of what I do is pretty successful at getting you going. And the fact that we're going to have 2 systems down by turn 12, and another one potentially up in about another 10 turns. By turn 20, around turn 20, we should have our 3rd colony down, and we'll probably try to focus on grabbing Pisces, but we may come back and grab Pegasus instead. I haven't completely decided on that, but one of those 2 systems is probably going to be ours. Hoth is another promising choice, but whatever we do, we're going to have to be careful. There's a lot of pirates over here, and we are going to start hacking. So this next video will be the introduction to the hacking part of the game. In fact, we can actually start a hack right now, and I think we're going to, but I'm debating where to start it from. So I can start a hack from here and hack to the pirate node over several other nodes, which will take a little longer. Or I can hack from here, but there's a greater risk of a trace getting back to us. However, at this point in the game, the pirate systems have just settled, and pirates and minor factions do not have the ability to trace hacks just yet. They will soon. You'll get a message around turn 15 to 20 that will basically say, hey, pirates and minor factions now have the ability to trace hacks that are done to them. So we get a few turns of free hacking. This is only going to take 4. There's a good chance we can pull this off before they actually get the ability to hack us, or to trace us, I should say. Another thing that we're going to want to do, since we have all this bandwidth and we don't have many options, we do have a piggyback, is the encryption. So encryption goes on your own systems, and what it does is when another player tries to hack your system, once it gets here, there's a certain number of turns before they can actually hack, and it'll be represented by a bubble that fills up, and the length of time in which that takes becomes longer if you have encryption on your system. The way that that helps you is it gives you more time to run your trace if you detect them, and so you have a better chance of tracing it back to their system, in which case you can shut their hack down. But it doesn't guarantee it. If they manage to outpace you before you finish the trace, then they still get the hack off. but it just takes them a little bit longer to do so. We can go ahead and run encryption on both of the systems that we have right now, and that doesn't take up not even quite half of our bandwidth, about half of our bandwidth. So um, we'll go ahead and do that for now, and we can play around with this a little bit more in the next game. But I'm going to go ahead and end this turn, and then we're going to end the video, and we'll pick up with the beginning of turn 13 in the next episode. So until then, you guys have a great day. This has been The Nose Plays, and we'll see you next time.